Yes, so that was a very, I don't know if anyone can see it very well. If you can hear me, if you just say the chat box. Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me? Okay, is it clear now? Hello. Can anyone hear me? Wait, is anybody hearing me? Can you hear me, sir? Okay, I can't hear you. Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me very well?
I'm so sorry for that.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I
Can
can
you?
hear
Yeah. All right.
you. Okay, so we just concluded the first session. I'm so sorry for delay. By Miss Oziana, and she took the art and craft of screenwriting, and she took three different segments. She spoke about how to develop your mind as a screenwriter, and she spoke about what to consider before choosing a desired location. And last part, which she took, was how to develop develop screenplays, and the session was very effective and very enlightening. Unfortunately, she had left the studio already. It was a very enlightening session. So we'll be going into the second session. We're going into the second session, which is the art of storytelling. And today, our second speaker for today will be Mr. Taiwo Ekunjobi. I'm sorry if I pronounced the name wrong. He's a Nigerian film director and screenwriter, a self-taught artist. He studied psychology at the University of Ibadan. He has written films such as Gigi Books, The God Among many others. His feature film debut in Ibadan found critical acclaim after screening at several festivals in 2021. The second feature, On Our Vibes, was an opening night film at the prestigious Nollywood Week Festival in Paris. Also screening in festivals from Argentina, Brazil to the USA. Most recently, On Our Vibes was distributed globally on Netflix, breaking into the coveted current top film list immediately on Flow. He's currently in post-production of his third film feature, A Green Killer. Mr. Tao also founded a film cafe where he writes about African films, and he also teaches at film school. And today he's going to be taking us on the art of storytelling. So you're welcome, sir. I think your journey is going.
All right. Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly, first of all?
Yes, I can hear
All right. Thank you very much for the session. I came in late for the last speaker. She was speaking about writing, and she was talking. She was referencing story model um, from from Blake Snyder, Save the Cat. Which is a very good resource for writers to really use when trying to write. So I don't think I'm not going to be saying too much of the mechanics of writing because um, I've seen the schedule of events. A lot of your people are going to be speaking about it in the course of the event. So I'm just going to be talking exactly about other things that maybe are not always spoken about. So right here, the question that was given to me as to what the organization would like me to speak about is how to write stories that sell. And really, it's an interesting question or interesting topic because that's really essentially the thing that everybody is trying to do. It's like you can have all the talent, you can have all the skill, you can have all the training, but if you don't know how to write stuff that sells, you won't be in business. And so, really, I hope I'll be able to say a few things about it. I hope I'll be able to, because I'm learning. Everybody's learning. Life storytelling is a lifelong learning experience, and you're always learning. You're always improving yourself day by day. So everything I'm sharing are things that I'm still learning. I'm still trying to get better at. I'm not uh, trying to come and lecture everybody. I'm also here to learn as well. So the first thing I'm going to say, so I'm going to be a bit unregulated, or should I say, I'm just going to be speaking off my head. So forgive if I ramble a bit, but I'm going to try to share the things I'm learning myself. So number one thing that I realize is that about that particular topic, how to write stories and sell, it's not a data question. So when I say it's not a data question, this is what I mean. It's easy for us to get into a conversation and to get into a mind space that looks at that question, how to write stories that sell, as a market research question. Like, okay, how can I write the next box office hit? How can I write the next Netflix hit? But that's the wrong way to look at that question. Because if you look at that question, there are things about storytelling that you will miss. And there are things that data will not reveal. The data will not tell you everything you need to know about story. In fact, I believe as a storyteller, data is a fog, you know, and it's not your business really. It's not your business as a writer or as a director to really concern yourself with the market research of, oh, this is what story sells. So let me try to find what sells and then do it. Because it's a studio's business to do the market research, to check box office trends, to do focus group discussions. But those things I fog. They don't always produce the correct outcomes. Many of the films that will do well in the box office, for example, will do well not because of the story, but because of other elements. So how can you then, first of all, look at that question or that situation as a data or market research question? Because that's one of the issues we've had in the industry. And should I say it's an issue that also transcends Nollywood and goes to other industry, is that we've seen that particular desire to make stories I sell as a data question. So what I need to do to make stories I sell is I need to get what are the top 10 films that have gone to the cinema and were profitable. What are the films that are doing well on Netflix? And then people try to make films of that. I'm saying that's a wrong way to think as a storyteller. There are many great films that we all love today that are possibly respected films that are very well awarded, but those films were box office fails. They flopped. So clearly, there's something wrong with anybody who comes to you today and says, "Oh, just go and look at what the film that broke $1 billion, and that's the film we should all try to make every single time." That's the wrong way to think about it, and it's a real big discussion, even in Nollywood, because a lot of times when we start talking about craft, we're not talking about storytelling craft. We're not talking about how to write. We're not talking about what to write. We're talking about characters, plots, all those things that make people enjoy stories. A lot of people want to reduce the conversation to data. They say, well, it doesn't matter. Our distributor told us that the only thing that matters is just putting these particular actors and putting this particular story, and then you'll be fine. And these are some of the bad things we've done historically that has produced an industry that is, in my opinion, underdeveloped. When it comes to the craft, I mean, we've come a long way in many different areas, but when it comes to the craft of the work itself, there are a lot of things that we need to be better at, and we won't be better at it until we look at story as art, not as a market research thing that we can easily just do a focus group and then what stories to tell. There are many examples of this that we can actually use to also do your own thinking too, so it doesn't feel like I'm just spitballing. Look at, for example, a film like Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption is one of the greatest films ever, but that film was a box office fail when it came out. Today is one of the most referenced films. Even if you're traveling from Lagos to Ibadan or you anywhere in Nigeria in a train, it's one of the few films that people watch on the train service. It's a global hit. It has rewatch value. People still watch it, but when it went to the box office, it failed. And if any studio executive is going to tell you, a studio executive will tell you that, oh, don't try to make a film like Shawshank Redemption because it failed in the box office. But it really failed. And that tells us that we cannot use box office trends to determine or judge the success of a story that sells. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So we cannot use box office trends to determine what films we should make. We cannot use market research. Studios are free to do what they want to do, but you as a writer, as a director, as a storyteller, you should be using other things to make your research. You should be using other tools to tell your stories. And we're going to get into it. I'm going to try to get into it. You look at films like John Carter. John Carter, very good film, but one of the biggest fails in the history of Hollywood. They spent $245 million on John Carter, and it failed. Why did it fail? Many other reasons. There are many theories. Poor marketing, or inflated budgeting, and all of those stuff. But if you went by the box office standard, you would think John Carter was a failure. He didn't make his money back, and it still not made his money back. but it's not a bad story. So clearly, something has to be fixed in the mind of anybody that's trying to get into writing, that you are not trying to predict the next box office success or the next Oscar award winning film. No, that is not what we're trying to sell as a storyteller. We will get into what you should be trying to sell as a storyteller. But looking at Nollywood take on this, historically Nollywood has done this mistake too. The industry began properly saying in 1992, and then most of the films that were made then were exploitative. That is, they all made the same type of films. They were making ritual films, or we're making films about prostitution, we're making films about crime, and everybody was just doing hundreds and 200 of those because they felt that's what is selling. And yes, people did make some money, but what did it say about our industry? It meant that we didn't tell stories that could travel. It meant that artists didn't improve their craft over time. It meant that we had a very negative perception around as to how we perceive ourselves as people. So, which on the other side is one of the powerful things about storytelling. Whatever you say about yourself, people will think about you. When you go to some countries in Africa, people will call you Juju man because all you've done in your films is show Juju. For example, Americans will come to your country and you'll be so proud and patriotic because your films tell them that that's who they are. So, and even today, I don't want to mention names, but if you are very aware of what goes on in the industry, you realize that a lot of times distributors and exhibitioners try to tell filmmakers the kind of story to tell. And they've been doing that for a while, but really, we've had more flops than hits. We've barely broken into the 1 billion naira mark. Whereas many Hollywood films come to Nigeria and break into that market. It clearly means that there's the money from the audience to pay for it, but people are not watching our stuff. So something about that isn't working. So as a writer, you have to stop forcing about trying to guess what the market wants. Instead, find the principles of storytelling. It's about quality storytelling. They overlap sometimes, but you should make it your own duty to know your craft. And that's why it's good that put together a program like this where people have been speaking about craft. It's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be bothering yourself and forcing over. I want to make the next wedding party. You can't make the next wedding party. You won't make the next wedding party. So that's that. Number two thing for me is so what are those elements of stories that sell? Someone that said that craft means evoking emotion. That's the work we're doing. Filmmaking is primarily an emotion delivering business. We're in the business of delivering emotions to people. And that's what story is all about. Right from, a newspaper article is a story. You can craft a good story about it. You can craft a bad story about it. Me and you could write the same newspaper article and I'll make you feel like, oh, we are all going to die tomorrow. And the other person will make you feel like, oh, Nigeria is such a fantasy. Nigeria is a dream because of the power of storytelling. Our job is in the delivery of emotion. And there are tricks to it. There are principles to it. But I think really where writers miss it is that writers don't really think too much as emotion. They just think about story. How do I unbundle this point? Okay, what I mean is this. And I usually say this on social media when I talk to people. I say a screenplay is a technical document. A lot of people think it's like writing prose or poetry or novel, but you've got to understand that a screenplay is much more complicated than that. A screenplay is a technical document. And so I call writers engineers. You have to be able to engineer certain concepts and engineer certain technicalities into your story. It's not just enough to have a grasp of storytelling in the sense that I can write a story, I can write English, I can write grammar. You need to understand the engineering aspect of it because story is structure. And when you understand the engineering aspect of it, you need to understand that some of the things you're engineering is emotion. You can't stumble on emotion Emotion has to be engineered deliberately into your story. And that's really where I think writers don't really think about stuff. I've met many writers that you just get up and write a story. Oh, okay, what happened? A man tried to go to, a guy is trying to get married, for example. And to them, that's a story to write. And a guy is trying to get married, and his mother doesn't want the girl he wants. The writer talks about that, but that writer doesn't find the emotion of the characters within that story. And so the story is hollow. It lacks personality because primarily the story doesn't know that my job is not just to create a scenario, my job is to create an emotion. Audiences participate in filmmaking, in the experience of watching a film in two different ways. And these two different ways are the things that separate great films from bad films, are the things that separate great industries from average film industries. You can either watch a project as a spectator or as a participant. A spectator watches your film but cannot empathize with your characters because you probably haven't done a great job in legitimizing the story world, legitimizing the characters, motivations, and decisions. And you haven't done a great work in even maybe writing your dialogue. And so the audience becomes a spectator. They laugh at it, but when they step out of the cinema, they've forgotten the story because they were just there to spectate. But there are films I have seen since when I was maybe 8 years old that haven't left me because of the images that they had, because of the fact that I was a participant in the struggles of the character. I could empathize with the character, I could empathize with the story, I could empathize with the world. And then I was able to participate emotionally. If I ask anybody who's watching this video right now, you've seen possibly maybe 500 Nigerian films, and possibly you don't even remember most of them. But you probably remember that one film you watched, the first maybe American Hollywood film you watched, because you just participated different. It just felt different. It's because those writers understand that we don't just want you to come and see a spectacle. We want you to participate emotionally, and that is something you engineer by learning how to create emotional affect in your stories. Let me attempt a broad take on that, really. And I recommend a book written by Carl Iglesias called Writing for Emotional Impact. I think that's one of the most important books out there on writing. That's Carl Iglesias' Writing for Emotional Impact, because that book does a lot to really explain and break the emotional landscape open for storytellers. You need to realize that no matter what you're doing, even if you're a journalist, even if you're a writer, even if you're a brand storyteller, even if you are a marketing executive, your work is in story, and what you need to learn is emotion. It doesn't matter whatever you have. You need to be able to nail emotion. And some of the things he talks about in his book is he talks about concept. Your concept must promise conflict. A lot of the conflicts that people create are things that they think are interesting, but they're actually not interested. They don't jump off the page. I can't get into the internal examples of it, but think about the last time you read a story that you didn't need to even read the script. The premise jumped out to you. John Wick, for example, is a premise that jumps out to you. A guy is the dog has been killed, or is he kidnapped, and he's trying to get his dog back. He's trying to avenge. That's a premise that works. This is why the superhero comic book films work, because they are simple. There's a conflict there. You can plug into it. You know who is trying. Sawkins says a story is just somebody trying to get up on a tree and then struggling to come down. So it's really down to finding a concept, a premise that has conflict. There's no conflict in, for example, saying a man and a woman fall in love. There's no conflict in that premise I just said. And And a lot of people think that that's what it means to write a romantic story. So for example, let me give a very extreme example. You you create two characters. You call one, let's call one the beauty, and then you call the guy handsome. There's no conflict there because they both look good. They both deserve each other. There's no conflict. Attractive people get together every time. What's the conflict there? But you look at Beauty and the Beast, for example, and that's conflict because they're coming from polarizing world places. They're coming from polarizing societies, polarizing experiences, and so when they come together, there there's conflict. One of the easiest ways to create conflict in your stories is to go for what we call the fish out of water trope. There's no conflict if you put a fish in water. A fish in water will swim. But if you put your fish out of water, then you have conflict and then you have story. In fact, that is the easiest way to create comedy. You want to create comedy, put a Jennifer from a village, put her in Lagos City. You've got comedy. That's comedy. Put a, I mean, put a Kevin Hart in a German prison somewhere, a short man, black man. He has to be in a German prison of terrorists. You've got comedy and you've not even written anything. People just see that premise and they're like, wow, I've got to see this. Because people can empathize with what would I do if I was, I mean, look at me now. Look, I'm Sharon. I'm just a normal writer. And they just told me that they are confusing me for a Malian terrorist. And SSS is after you. Do you know how interesting that is? That is one way to create concept. And there are different ways to it. I'm sure the writers in this conference will get into it because I don't really write anymore. But that's an example. So it starts from concept. A lot of times I've read too many scripts where I told the writer or the director who wrote the script, I said, this story doesn't need to happen because it's fish in the water. There's nothing there, and there are no serious conflicts. It doesn't escalate in any way. I'm not at any point scared for the safety of my character because I think a rich guy is trying to date a rich girl. Where's the conflict? Well, maybe you add something on it, but if it's at that, you have nothing really. It's just fish in the water. Of course, it also speaks about theme. What's your theme? What are we taking home when we go back, when we go sit, when we leave your cinema house, when we stop reading the book, when we are done reading? What stays with us? A lot of times we do two wrong things. The two things we do that are wrong is this: we start a story from theme, and then try to fit the plot into the theme at all costs. Okay, I want to tell a story that love is wicked because my boyfriend broke my heart. So the writer begins to write, and every single time she doesn't let the characters she has created breathe. No, she imposes her agenda and her theme on the characters. That's one way to misuse theme. Another way to write is that to misuse theme is to write a story that has a very overdone theme. That's why as a storyteller you need to be someone who watches a lot of films. You need to read lots of books because you can't overdo a theme. I'm tired of saying girl comes from village and rich man wants to marry her story. I've seen that film 700 times in Nigeria. Maybe put a twist on it. But if you're doing that again now and you want to tell a story that sells, my brother, my sister, it's not going to sell. Because people are like, I was raised on this content. There are some characters that are overdone already. Some characters are overdone already. This year was a year of making Lagos all about the drug baron, all about a gangster, a man that is just there's an Baba Saleh somewhere running. Okay, is there any other thing about Lagos that you can say? I mean, I appreciate every filmmaker out there. I'm just saying it's going to become a trend very soon where everybody wants to tell stories about gangsters, you know. And if you're telling a gangster story, find something different. It's tiring seeing the same stories being done over and over, you know. And if eventually it affects your theme, because what are you saying about your world, really? Are we all saying that there's nothing good about Lagos? Or, I mean, as an example, are we saying, I mean, what are we really saying? You can't, we've got to be very careful with the things we choose because people are watching. People are watching, and you have the capacity to shape how our experiences are perceived by the world. That's aside anyway. But either ways, coming back to the topic, theme is important. You've got to think deeply about your theme, and you've got to really look for a theme that is complex. I think it develops over time for industries. I think there was a time when stories in Hollywood, in the golden era of Hollywood, was simply about just telling beautiful stories. And then when the World War II happened, cynicism was born into Hollywood, and then came the Western movies, film noir, films that dabbled with a bit with some dark subjects. And then after that, the American optimism came up again, and they continued the golden era. And then Vietnam happened. Now Vietnam had a lot of the effects of America because people came back disillusioned about the war. Sorry, I'm rambling. But that produced the sets of people like Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, because he started telling stories about the people. In Italy, that produced what we call Italian neorealism, where it was films about realistic things. They stopped telling stories about like Indians, they stopped dancing around. I'm not insulting anybody, I'm just saying theme is created sometimes too by the prevailing emotion of the day. So as a writer, you need to be able to capture that. People respond when they can empathize with your characters, with your story world. It's very important to think about theme. What do I want to say about Nigeria? What do I want to say about myself? What do I want to say about my environment? I'm not saying be positive or be negative, but say something that is real. Character, moving on to character, things to think about, make your characters compelling and layered. A lot of times I read stories and screenplays and the characters are not compelling, they're not layered. Okay, he's a doctor, but him being a doctor adds nothing to the story. So why is he a doctor? He just goes he just goes to the hospital and he comes back. You've not used that particular word to create anything for your character. A lot of times we just do that. We just give occupations to characters, or we just give them particular things and we don't speech types, and we don't think deeply about it. I've seen films where this guy is supposed to be undereducated and yet he's speaking fluent English because the writer has been writing English instead of writing character. You need to go out there into the world and participate more in the world. You need to read books. You need to watch wide. You can't. I mean, I've seen too many advertising executives in Nigerian films, and they don't even do the advertising agencies. They don't even talk about it. We don't see the technical jargon. We don't see the world. That environment is not explored. These are the things that make films really speak to people. Your character design has to be much better than just slapping a feature on somebody. It's got to be part of the story. Okay, if he's a doctor, it means that at some point in the story, for example, his medical expertise will come into play in the plot. I saw a film where, a Nigerian film a long time ago, where this lady was going to be killed by somebody. She's just a normal secretary. And then she suddenly pulls out a gun and shoots. I'm like, how did she learn how to shoot a gun? You didn't foreshadow it. You didn't tell us. I mean, there was no setup for it. I mean, how is this secretary able to shoot a gun in the middle of the film? How? And when she shot the gun, nobody said anything about it again. It was done. How is she able to do that? It's poor character design. So that's just an example of it. There's plots, I've spoken about it, where you need your plot to be clear. Surprise is always interesting. try to always subvert expectations. You know, when people come to watch a romantic film, they have certain broad expectations, but they don't want to get Romeo and Juliet again. So you got to find ways to reinvent the wheel. You can't just take a film from your favorite film, Titanic, and you can't even redo that in Nigeria anyway. But you can't just take a film from anywhere and say, "Oh, I want to remake it," and think people won't spot. People spot it. People are very intelligent. People are very intelligent. You surprise you. People have seen all types of films, so they know where you're being legit and where you're not being legit. So your plot has to subvert expectations. That's how to really sell them an emotion. You can't give them the same old rice they've been eating and say they'll say, "Oh, this one is different." No, you've got to add some salt. You've got to add some condiments. You've got to add something to your own rice to make it different. So subvert the expectations. Oh, in a romantic comedy, people think the man and woman will end up together. Why don't you change it and make sure they don't even end up together? Yet it's a romantic comedy. It's a romantic comedy, but they didn't end up together, and that was best for the characters. Why does a romantic film need to end with a marriage? It doesn't need to end with marriage. It can end with we just realizing we can be good friends. You know, so you have to be thinking every time you write your story, every time you are developing your story, thinking through the decisions your characters make, thinking through the plot. It's got to stay consistent. It's got to stay logical. You can't just say because you want people to be surprised and just bring an angel in the end of your action film and an angel just flies from the sky and just saves the day. That's the Ex Machina. That's crazy. That you've just cheated the audience from the experience. Whatever you're bringing has to still come into the story's internal logic. It has to come within that internal logic. You understand me? So you've got to really have detail in that area. You know, the final thing I'll talk about is your story world. A lot of times, story worlds are need to be carefully chosen. I've seen too many banks in films. I've seen too many men just hanging out in the middle of the day in the lounge in Lekki and just talking. Are there more story worlds, really? You know, I'm tired. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing people doing their head every time in films. It's okay, but are there other interesting worlds out there? Are you saying that this is all about? I mean, our films at times make me laugh. We tell so many films about the rich, and how many people are really that wealthy in Nigeria? Like, everybody is doing films about one chief, one rich family somewhere. How many people who will tell the story about the average Nigerian? Or are you saying that there's no drama? You know, I've seen so many films about young people who do a film about two 70-year-old people falling in love in their old people's home. Who will do that film? It's one thing I want to watch. I don't want to see same old, same old. You know, so your story world has to be something that people want to really see. You know, there's a film that's trendy right now that's on there, and I was really happy to hear about the film. We call it Gangs of Lagos. I really wanted to hear it. Okay, Gangs of Lagos, really? Okay, I know there are gangs in Lagos, but nobody has ever thought to do anything about them. So let me see what it's about. The story world is different. You know, and for Nigeria, I'm really hard on us, on myself as well, that we've got to do better in the story worlds that we explore in our films. Too many times where we are too scared to tell stories about other worlds. Who will tell a story about what goes on in the oil fields in Niger Delta? And I don't even want it to be a suffer story where everybody's suffering. Why can't you put a love story in there? Why should the reward every single time in a film be money? Why can't it be your life? Why can't it be the fact that, I mean, you didn't make money, but you're happy at the end of the day? Why should it be that? And that's why people had issues with Eyimofe, an art house film by Chukwu Esiri, because people felt like, oh, wow, our normal film that we watch, everybody's always rich. They end up buying car and they go to UK and they have twins. But that's not real life. You know, so sometimes let's work on the story worlds that we have. A final thing I want to say is the non-negotiable truth about your artistic voice. I mean, your artistic voice, which is really what ties it up for me. Everybody has something different. Nobody is the same. You're not the same. Even your thumbprint already shows that you have something different about you. And that's really what the world wants to see. That's really what the world is willing to pay for. I don't want to pay to see myself again. I want to pay to see someone that will do something I would never have thought about. Something that is genuinely yourself. So as a writer, as a creator, you need to find yourself, find your issues, find your agendas, the things that make you tick. Because really, most times those are the things you will write passionately and write well. You won't necessarily get it when you are writing on a geek level where, oh, romantic comedy is raining now, so let me write romantic comedy. No. But if you write about something that really hurts you, okay, maybe your parents had a marital issue when they were growing up. You could write about it, something that really hurts you. You could use that to create something, and that's the kind of things you will write well because you know it, you've been there, you experienced it. My mentor Tune Kelani makes films about Yoruba experience, Yoruba cultural experience. That's who he is. If you talk to him if he's sleeping, he's waking up, he's a Yoruba man to the core, and he puts that out there proudly. So the fact if you're writing bland stories and you're writing stories that don't sell is because you've not found you. Take out time to find the things that push you. Take out time to find the things that hurt you. Take out time to find your value list. Make a values list. These are the things that I'm passionate about. These are the issues that I'm always going to talk about. And then you go from them. Steven Spielberg is one of the, it's called an anti-war filmmaker. He's made many films, but he's prominent for making anti-war films. He made it through Munich. He made it through Bridge of Spies, through Saving Private Ryan. The man doesn't like war, and he makes it the fulcrum of his work. So that's me. I've said three things, and I know I didn't say a lot, but I hope I was able to maybe extend the conversation a bit about how to tell stories ourselves. So I'm done. So I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank
I
you.
can hear you now.
Thank you very much for this insightful teaching. From what I got, um, on how to sell stories, how to write stories that sell, stories on how to write stories that sell. I think first of all, before I speak, there was a question somewhere. Somebody asked that does Gang of Lagos have a conflict in it? I don't know, from Isioma.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's okay. Not asking me, right? It's asking Isioma, right? Okay, good. So,
No, I'm asking you. The question is from Isioma. Yeah.
does he have a conflict? Well, yeah, there's several conflicts in the story. Uh, it emerges from. So it's first of all, it's a dangerous question to ask me because it's dangerous to take these positions publicly. But let me try to back it. I think the conflict in gangs comes from the fact that there are two different worldviews. There's a worldview of the of the children of the powers that be, and there's a worldview of the children on the street. Now I don't know whether they did enough to speak about that conflict, but that was the main conflict that drove the film. That we are here out there, we are on the streets, we are trying to protect you, but your own kids are living on the island, and they go to America, they are schooled abroad, they have their life set up for us, and we don't have anything. We just get peanuts. So that's the essential conflict of Gangs of Lagos. I don't know if it was properly excavated. I don't know whether it could have been more done to really wade into those issues. But that's the central conflict of, I think, of gangs of Lagos.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question. So the last point you made was finding your artistic voice, and the fact that most times people don't write stories that sell because they don't have like they've not found their artistic voice, and they don't write on things that they're passionate about. So how does one find that artistic voice? Basically, that's my question. How does one know when the person has found that artistic voice?
So it's really about emptying your mind and really, I mean, the different tools to it. So, like the great Wally Shoyinka grew up in a very uh, culturally rich environment. And so, naturally, just putting pen to paper in that culturally rich environment produces what you've seen, you know. And it's difficult for us right now because we live in such we live in certain contexts that possibly don't support artistic expression. In the sense that we're just running helter skelter. We don't stay in villages anymore. We all live in cities, and we stay in tiny rooms and homes, and we don't have family time. Extended families are not available anymore. We don't have Tales by the Moonlight anymore. Reading culture is on the wane. You know, we don't go see stage plays. Our schools are not necessarily don't necessarily teach literature properly, and and many things in modern life really affect finding it. But you just got to take it by yourself. You got to find what are the things that I enjoy. When I started making films, I made 2013. I've done at least 50 short films that I didn't like. I just kept doing it until I found what I really enjoyed. You know, and I found out that this is what I really want to read about. It made me want to study more. It made me buy books. For example, I like telling stories about old Nigeria. How did it feel in the 60s, 70s, 80s? And I buy books about that experience. I I go look for newspapers. I go see stage plays about it. I read essential about. So for some person else, it may be that your real thing is that you want to talk about love. That's your voice. That's the thing you understand. I can't remember his name now. Richard something. He wrote most of the great British romantic comedies of the 80s and 90s. That was his specialty. He was good at it. He wrote several of them because that's what he was. He grew up in a home that had so much love, and when he got into school, he started expressing different, and he was so shocked that why is it so different, and then started writing, and so those things came from experience. So your voice is just it's a lifelong thing. It's a lifelong thing of you discovering your voice. If you're lucky, you are lucky if you can find yourself before you're 30. You're very lucky if you can find yourself. It's a lifelong experience of looking at the things you enjoy, looking at the things that hurt you, looking at the things you are passionate about, and then iterating, doing something, improving on it, leveraging. Oh, I enjoy doing this. Oh, I didn't enjoy doing this. Oh, this was good, this wasn't good. And then you really come in. And at a point in time, depending on whatever journey you're on, you come to a point where, okay, I think I really can nail the things that move me. Some people, it's philosophical. There are ideas that you just want to talk about. Look at someone like Fela. Fela lived his music. Many musicians today talk about struggle, struggle, struggle. They don't lead protests because they're not living their music. They are fake. But Fela lived his music. Look at the Bible. John the Baptist lived his message. So that's really the process of it. You going through something day by day, chipping at it block by block. There's really no way to tell you to find it. There's really no way. It's a personal thing. It's almost a spiritual thing. It's almost like you locking yourself up in a dark room and saying, "What are the things I love? What are the things that move me?" And then daily you go about it, and then someday you come to a light about it. Okay, I think I know the things I am not, because you could still be discovering yourself if you are 80 years old. You could still be discovering yourself if you are 90 years old. There's no end to self-discovery. There's no end to finding your artistic voice, you know. But usually to be around things that move you, things you know, and things that move you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So the next question is okay. So the next question is from Damilare, and he asked that what would the period of Nigeria cinema be to you in your own perspective?
Periods.
Yes.
All right. So we had of course, it's asking me history, so I have to dust my brain. So we had a period, of course, in the colonial and post-colonial era where it was just the, the colonial groups making documentaries about life in Nigeria. Several of them are on YouTube these days, and then they supported some of our local people. There's a film called Fincho, it's on YouTube, first Nigerian film made by entirely international crew, but they were just colonial efforts, post-colonial efforts, trying to explain what was going on in Nigeria in their own way and everything. But what we call the golden era of Nigerian film industry began in the late 70s up onto the late 80s. And that was an era where we had the likes of Eddie Ugoma, we had um, Obet Ogunde, we had Ola Balogun, and that era was an era that was characterized by us moving from stage culture and then collaborating with international partners to make films. Ola Balogun made the first Igbo language film called Amadi at the time in the 70s. Um, Eddie Guma made several, I can't remember right now. Ogunde made several as well. Ola Balogun made several, and that was a golden era because people watched those films, they were popular. A few of them went to festivals internationally, and then disaster struck in some different ways. There are different theories on how disaster struck in the late 80s. First of all, the economy was terrible, so film became incredibly expensive to make. And so Aromire, the Yoruba filmmaker at the time, and some other people discovered a cheaper way to make films, and that's really the birth of Nollywood. In 1991 or 1990, he made Ageni Yami, which was a film made on VHS tapes, which was a cheaper way of making films. And with that move, a lot of people moved to it. Kenneth Inebwe, Ogoro, Kingsley Ogoro moved to that technology in 1993, made Living in Bondage, which was the biggest film nationally at the time. And then that's really when Nollywood started, you know, and that killed the golden era of the Nigerian film because that generation of filmmakers never moved into the new Nollywood. The new Nollywood was about more of exploitation films, cheap films that just make it quickly and make a profit. And then came 2005 Irapada by Kunle Afolayan, first Nigerian film at the cinema, Silverbird Cinemas, which signaled the beginning of the Nollywood new era, where we went back to Silverbird Cinemas. And since then, we've been on that journey. Of course, I don't know whether I can call Netflix entrance as a new. I don't think it's a new thing, but I mean, those are the three important milestones in Nollywood. I hope I've answered this question.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is the last question from Sioma. How do you write great lines in your scripts?
How do you write great lines in your script?
Yeah.
You write great lines in your script um, in two ways. You can be ultra talented like Aaron Sorkin or Quentin Tarantino, who God has given them a natural talent for words. In fact, their films a lot of times are dialogue driven, and it's so difficult. And really, Not many people have that talent, you know. Um, but really, for me, where good lines come from, it come from character. If your character is solid, the character will produce the lines it needs. Reason why we are having issues writing a great line for your character is because you don't know your character well enough. So you don't know what your character should be saying. You know. So it's all about character. Fix your character, know your character's backstory, and put your character in a situation that pushes them, that challenges them, and then the words will come. It's like you now. If Mopo stops you on the road and say they found that you resemble Shekau Boko Haram, like me now, look at me, look like Shekau. You stop me. You think I will not talk? I will produce great lines when they say I'm like Shekau. I will produce the great lines. It will come naturally. So great lines come from building great characters. Work on your characters, you will develop great lines. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you very much. This session was very enlightening, and I don't think there's any other question. We're really grateful. Thank you for joining us and for teaching us today. So I think that's the end of the second session. So um okay. I'll be moving it from the stream so that I can conclude. Um okay. So we're really grateful to our two speakers that have come here today. I know it has been very enlightening, very, very enlightening, and we've learned so much. And this program, this workshop is brought by the African Creative Hub. It's brought by the African Creative Hub, and I will be sharing my screen so that we can watch the video that I'm about to put now. Because we need creative minds in the African Creative Hub. We need people with talent. If you want to, develop your writing skills, you want to develop your screenwriting skills, we need you in the African Creative Hub. Sorry, I'm trying to share the video. Okay. Right. So the African Creative Hub is a talent house known for is a talent house known for empowering African creatives. We help storytellers develop practical skills to grow their capacity to tell stories that travel around the globe. We believe in the power of shaping the African narrative through strategic stories that amplify our values, heritage, and culture. The African Creative Hub is also committed to building a community of filmmakers across Africa to facilitate collaboration, co-production ventures, and to encourage the development of authentic local African stories. So, as I've said before, if you are a young creator, you want to, grow your practical skills, grow your skills to tell stories that travel around the world, to grow your skills that, to grow your skills that shows the culture of Africa, the heritage, stories that are different from, as our speakers already said, we need like new change in stories. We don't need the same stories again and again. There are so many aspects of Nigeria that we haven't looked at, that we haven't spoken about through film production. So you can join the African Creative Hub today. I have sent the, if you want to join, you can send a message to the phone number written in the chat box. Send a message there if you would be interested in joining the African Creative Hub. Okay, then, and also the African Creative Hub is brought by, of course, the IP Business Capital. It's brought by the IP Business Capital, and we are a business advisory firm that provides cutting edge IP solutions to African institutions. We help C suite leaders, media houses, investors, creative entrepreneurs, and public bodies identify, protect, and create tangible value from their intellectual property and intangible assets. So the African Creative Hub is brought by the IP Business Capital. So please feel very free to join the African Creative Hub. And also I will be sending a feedback form if you would like to want to hear your opinion, want to hear your opinion and your views about this program because it has been so enlightening. So want to hear how it has helped you, how the IP, the screenwriting workshop has helped you, the contributions you want to make, the ideas, whatever it is. So I'll be sending the link now. So please do well to fill the form. We would be so grateful if you fill it, and you should know that your opinion matters here. So sorry, let me try. So yes, so that will be all. So please do well to fill the form so that we can, see what you feel about the workshop. Then we're rounding up already. As we know, the second part of this workshop will be happening tomorrow on Sunday. That is by 12 p.m. So please do well to also join. As it has been enlightening today and very, very educative, and has actually been, we have two interesting sessions. So do well to join in to, to understand more and help in creating your skills. First spoke about, the art and craft of screenwriting, things that you can do to develop your mind as a screenwriter. And Miss Ozioma came and she gave different things that you could do. Trying something new, taking courses, reading books, going out to have experiences, changing environments. Then from there, she spoke about things that we can consider in choosing a desired movie genre. I know we spoke about the fact that a film or a write-up doesn't just have to have one gen. It can have two, three different mixed up and all. But whatever you're putting your gen as, the content of your work has to follow through that gen. And then she also spoke about the how to structure and develop screenplays, talking about the midpoint. Mr. Taiwo also came here and gave us, enlightening points on how to sell stories that sell, and the fact that think of something new, think outside the box. Don't write about, okay, now we know about the gangsters in Lagos, talk about something else, talk about the good parts of Nigeria. It's not just about Nigeria, is not just about corruption or rituals, talk about the good parts, the good cultural aspect of Nigeria and all. So today's session has really been interesting, and we're super grateful for everyone that was here on this stream. Please do well to fill the form. We'll be closing now, and we're super grateful for joining us today. Thank you so much. Please, we'll be expecting you tomorrow. Thank you for joining the stream today. Goodbye.